Okay, so what does it mean to produce good history? What does it mean to have written a great work of history? Read the reviews on the back of any critically acclaimed work of history, even perhaps a work you've read yourself, your favourite work of history. What do the critics praise? Do they praise factual accuracy? Does it say, historian X has produced a great book with lots of accurate dates and events that have been described in the right order? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
If you go to Amazon.com, if you look at the reviews that have been produced there of the books, they'll say things like, this historian has really brought the past alive. It's a very strong narrative. It's dramatic. It is providing an insight into a lost age. It's history for our time, etc., etc., etc. I mean, let's look at one highly acclaimed work of history. This is Orlando Figes's A People's Tragedy, which also happens to be one of my favourite works of history. And you know, if you read the reviews on that, you get a certain sense of, you know, the strength of it. I'll give you a description from it, though, perhaps an extract from the book that will allow you to get a sense of what I think makes Figes a particularly powerful historian. Now, this is an extract that describes the events of Bloody Sunday in Russia in 1905. Snow had fallen in the night, and St. Petersburg awoke to an eerie silence on that Sunday morning, 9th of January 1905. Soon after dawn, the workers and their families congregated in churches to pray for a peaceful end to the day. Singing hymns and carrying icons and crosses, they formed something more like a religious procession than a workers' demonstration. Bystanders took off their hats and crossed themselves as they passed, and yet there was no doubt that the marchers' lives were in danger. Church bells rang, and their golden domes sparkled in the sun on that Sunday morning as the long columns marched across the ice towards the centre of the city. In the front ranks were the women and children, dressed in their Sunday best, who had been placed there to deter the soldiers from shooting. At the head of the largest column was the bearded figure of Father Gapper, in a long white cassock, carrying a crucifix. Behind him was a portrait of the Tsar, and a large white banner with the words, "Soldiers, do not shoot at the people." Red flags had been banned. Suddenly, a bugle sounded, and the soldiers fired into the crowd. A young girl who had climbed up onto an iron fence to get a better view was crucified to it by a hail of bullets. A small boy who had mounted the equestrian statue of Prince Przewalski was hurled into the air by a volley of artillery. Other children were hit and fell from the trees where they'd been perching. When the firing finally stopped and the survivors looked around at the dead and the wounded bodies on the ground, there was one vital moment, the turning point of the whole revolution, when their mood suddenly changed from disbelief to anger. So, okay, I exaggerated a little with those sound effects and the music and so on, but we strip back that narrative to its factual core, to its chronology, and what are we left with? If we remove the selected emphasis on the massacred children, the anecdote, the poetic scene setting of the eerie silence and the snow, you know, that dramatic structure that he provides, the figurative language, the moral judgment, what are we left with? And it's the last line in particular which is both the most important and least verifiable. It is also the most historical line in the whole extract. One vital moment, the turning point of the whole revolution, when their mood suddenly changed from disbelief to anger. Now, I'm not going to judge how Figes claims to know what the mood of thousands of people happened to be on that morning. Because that's what history does. That's what historians do. They make those sort of generalized judgments. They interpret, and then they provide a narrative with facts to support that judgment. Because as C.H. Carr said, you know, facts are like fish. And historians actually don't go out fishing in the random way they do when you go fishing in the ocean. No, historians go to the fishmongers and they select from the slab of fish that have already been categorized into species and size and have been gutted, ready to be served up in whatever dish the historian feels like cooking. Most importantly, I think, Figues's historical judgment cannot be disproved by comparing it to a truth that somehow lies hidden in the past, waiting for the historian to uncover. As the French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss put it, I mean, he said, historical fact has no objective reality. It only exists as retrospective reconstruction. And that is what history is. It is retrospective reconstruction.